Hello and welcome back to Butcher That Model and part 3 of our build of Belisarius Cawl. So, how far have we got? What did we do? We've got his base body down and we used the contrast paint Flesh Terrors Red on his cape. We've left that to dry for a few days, and then what we're going to do now is I'm going to start doing the highlights by layering. Now, as it is, I quite like the look of that, and if that was just going to be used as a tabletop miniature, I'd leave it at that. But I just want to take it just a little bit further. So on our palette, on the wet palette, I put all the paints we're going to need. So we've got Mephiston Red, Evenscon Scarlet, Screamer Pink, and then Lead Belcher, Grey Knight Steel. That's the new one. The gold, which is, hang on, Retributor Armour, and some Necromon Compound. Sending the white balance scatter in it. So we'll move the wet palette out of the way, and we're going to start layering the Mephiston Red. Now, I put some water off to the side. Move wet palette. Get some red on there. Now, what I like to do is I like to get the edge of a bit of tissue and just touch the side of the brush and take some of the moisture out. And what that leaves is more pigment than moisture, the carrier. So let's start. And what we want to do is we want to leave the dark in the deep recesses. And just start picking out all the folds, all the highlights, and literally just start working on the high areas. Where it's pulled and it's dark, that's what you want. You want to leave that in there for the shadows, but you want to bring up the raised bits so that it forms a highlight. Right there. A bit more on. So literally, send your paint right down and then touch the brush onto a piece of cloth, piece of tissue, and wick away some of the water. And you'll find it goes on really nicely on the high points, and because you're taking a lot of the moisture out of it, it doesn't have a tendency to run down into the shaded areas where you don't want it. That's a good little tip, that. Wick off some of the moisture. Right, so I'll do this, and you don't want to sit and watch me doing this because this will take about an hour. You don't want to sit here watching me doing this for an hour, so I'll see you in half a second because it's time machine. Time machine. Well then, I've got the first bit of layer down, which was the Mephiston Red. Now we're going to move on to Evenscon Scarlet. Now what we do with this bit, I've done a little bit of a drawing just to show you. It's 2D, but you'll get the meaning. What we've done is, no, that's white balancing out, isn't it? Like mad. So we've got the shaded areas, and then what we've done is we've used Mephiston Red on the raised bits. Now what we want to do is we want to use a lighter shade of red, but only go half the distance again that we painted in the normal red, the Mephiston Red. So we're bringing the highlight up. So I'll show you what I mean now. So some water on a wet palette, get into our Evenscon Scarlet. That's a bit much. Wick off the moisture, and then what we're going to do is we're not going to go as far down as we did with the Mephiston Red. we're literally just going to start on the very edges, really, and just imagine if the sun was out, if the light source was shining on it, the sun or artificial light, whatever the light source is that's shining on it, what areas would stand out more, the high points. And that's literally all we're going to do now, is go around the entire cloak, just picking out the very high points. Once you start doing it this way and you're building it up, you think, oh wow, this is looking really nice. It starts to give it more depth, more of a three-dimensional effect to your paint effect than just a boring flat colour. Unlike colouring or drawing on paper in 2D, we're actually working in 3D, so use the 3D, use that to your advantage. I know it sounds a bit daft, but people tend to paint in 2 dimensions when you're actually working in 3. Right then, so see the difference now? Right, so I'll do the same again. I'll use our time machine, pause it, do the rest of the red, and then what we'll do is we'll get on to doing, we'll start to put his body together, his upper torso, and then we'll get on to silvers and metals and metallic and shiny things. So I'll see you in half a second. For you, for me about another 20 minutes or so. Right, it's a time machine. Time machine. Right then, the last thing I'm going to do is, I've looked at the Screamer Pink and I think, personally, I think it's a bit too purple. So what I'm doing is, on my wet palette, I've blended together the Screamer Pink and the Evil Sun Scarlet. Now, where there's the tears and rips in the cloth, like this bit here, and the very, very high points, I'm just going to do a little tiny extra edge highlight of the Screamer Pink and Evil Sun Scarlet mix, just to give it that damaged, faded look on some of the areas. And the edge of his cloak will get extremely worn where it trails along the floor, and as his home planet is Mars, it's very dusty and stony, apparently, allegedly. In the 40k universe it is the red dust of Mars, so we'll just give him some damage on his cloak. I know it's trying to make something look, you know, natural on a figure that's probably 90% robot and 10% man. But it just gives it that extra. Be very careful when you do this figure. There's a spike on his back. I've just snapped it off earlier and I had to glue him back in. So be careful when you get yours if you do this. That spike's a pain. You'll get to hate that spike. Right then, I reckon. Let's just clip the edge of that a little bit more. A bit down there. Right on the edge. Well, I'm quite happy with that. Let's give it a bit of a... So what we'll do now is clean the brush off. Now the thing with Games Workshop paints, especially the reds, are really heavily pigmented, and this stuff is a godsend. Master's brush cleaner. Mephiston Red is the worst colour in the world for getting out of your brush. It's a fantastic colour and it covers beautifully. And as far as coverage goes, it's one of Games Workshop's best paint. But that's the reason for it. There's that much pigment in it. You've got to go something to clean your brush off. We'll give it a good soak later on tonight. Right then, so let's get on with Mr. Cawl's body. These things are brilliant. God hands, absolutely brilliant. They're not good for Games Workshop stuff because it's such thick gates. You'll end up running the risk of damaging your God hands. So what I tend to do is use Games Workshop's own nippers to get the parts off the sprue, and then I use the God hands and trim off the nubs. Don't be like Dad. Dad actually damaged his God hands. Sacrilege! Sacrilege! He snapped the tip, broke the tip off his God hands. Well, yeah, I think he was doing a Bane blade or something like that at the time. The gate's about 6 foot thick. So, let's give it a trim on the nubs. And then what we'll do is we'll join this together, touch up any undercoat we need to, and then give it an all over blast with our bolt gun, or lead belcher as it's now called. Sorry, see how old I am? Bolt gun metal doesn't exist anymore. Stop calling it that. Some of the old colours I wish we still had, like the original snake bite leather. Wish I still had some of that left. That was a brilliant colour to paint with. It's fantastic it was. I know they brought out the new contrast snake bite leather. I've not tried it yet, but the old snake bite leather, the layer paint was base paint, I think it was actually. It was absolutely brilliant stuff. It was great. Right then, so that's I've done that off camera. I'm an idiot. That's that together. That'll flash off a minute, and then we use a handing stick just to hand off the nubs. I didn't realise that's got a lip on that bit. So we're going to have to undercoat it again anyway. So we'll sand off them bits. Give it a sand. Foxy's probably going mad at me now. Undercoating it before you take off the sprue. Yeah, but I like to do that, and I can see where my nubs are and that, and then when I sand down, you can see how far I'm going. Right, well that's that denubbed. So what I'll do is there's a bit there, missed a nub there. Right, so what I'll do now is I'll give that a quick blast. We'll just undercoat that with Aberdeen black. And then we'll be extremely naughty. We won't put it in the holder Let's set that off now, and we'll take it straight out of the pot, and that's probably upset everybody. But what we're doing is putting a bit of undercoat down. Now, there are undercoats. You don't have to use undercoats, you can just use ordinary paint like I'm doing here. It doesn't matter, it's an undercoat. And the only reason I'm doing this is because with being black, you need black to get your metallics down on. Doo-ba-doo-ba-doo. I think that bit's actually covered up. I'll have a look in the book in a minute. I'll have a look at his instructions in a minute. I can just see Foxy's eyebrow twitching as I'm taking paint out of a pot, putting it straight on a miniature. Right, I think that'll do us. Oh no, we missed that bit, didn't we? Right, Dad, I've closed the lid now. Alright. Don't tell me off for not using his dad device, which is an anti-spillage and hold the lid open device. He's very clever, Mr. Mountain. Comes out with these wonderful, wonderful inventions. I think what we need to do is get him to stick his finger in a light socket so his hair stands on it and looks like a mad scientist. Right, so that's his main bodywork done, his torso. So we'll leave that to dry for a little bit, and then what we'll do is all the metallic bits, all the metal parts now, what we need to do is we need to paint with lead belcher, get all the silver down, okay, and then we can work off the silver and we can add bronzes and golds and coppers and whatever we like to all the little fancy little details. Alright, so what I'll do now is I'll base coat all the bits that are going to be silver, and that's going to take a while because this gentleman is covered in metal bits. He's literally covered in them. So I'll see you when I start getting the silver down, which is probably going to be the next episode. So I'll base coat all this silver that needs silvering, and then when we come back, what we'll do is we'll do all the little fancy bits in our next episode and then put it together. Sounds like a plan, Stan. In the meantime, it's a time machine. Alright, have fun, stay safe. Okay, go out, meet new people, do exciting things. Don't just sit inside watching your Xbox or your telly or painting miniatures. Get out and enjoy the sunshine. It's the summer holidays in England now. Get out and enjoy it. Alright, be careful. Always tell somebody where you're going and what time you're going to be home. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one.